Joe Nocera, co-author of All the Devils Are Here. How far have we come since the financial crisis? Where is the economy in your view right now?
Well, the economy, of course, is in terrible shape, but with the unemployment and so forth. But in terms of, are we safer than we were in 2008? Only because there's so much fear on Wall Street, not because regulatory reform has really made a difference or had an impact or even in many cases been implemented.
What about Wall Street? How far has Wall Street come since 2008? Are the devils still here?
The devils are not here the way they were because, again, fear reigns. Nobody's making mortgage-backed securities, right? The only way you can get a house in America right now is to get a guarantee from Fannie and Freddie because Wall Street independently isn't going to bundle any loans. All the bad stuff that they were so gleefully doing in 2007, 2006 is gone. But not because of regulation, because of fear. So the street runs along very nicely right now, no big problems. The real question is, when does greed overcome fear?
What about the link between Washington and Wall Street? This was highlighted during the crisis. Has it been weakened at all?
No, it's actually been strengthened. There are fewer banks today than there were, fewer mega banks, fewer too big to fail banks. More importantly, the Republican takeover of the House has created an enormous pushback against the regulations that has been funded in no small part by contributions from the big Wall Street firms.
And what about some of the players during the crisis? When we look back at Geithner and Bernanke and Paulson, will we look back and see them as heroes or perhaps goats?
I think we will almost surely look back and see them for what they did in 2008 as heroes. I do believe that. They did what they had to do. They took extraordinary measures. They basically broke all the rules to save the system. The real question now, so Paulson's gone, so his legacy is what it is. But Bernanke and Geithner are still in government, and they're both creating a different set of legacies now that will affect how people think about what they did in 2008.
Still, nobody went to jail from the financial crisis of 2008. Dick Fold's still out there, Angelo Mozillo, they paid fines perhaps. Should we start seeing some people in jail?
I believe we should. I believe that there is something wrong with a system where you can bring it over the edge and walk away. I'm particularly offended by the fact that Angelo Mozillo got to walk away with essentially a $20 million fine. He created a company that basically did nothing but make sleazy subprime loans, and yet somehow that's not illegal. Not just sleazy, but basically predatory illegal loans. And yet nobody, not a single person at Countrywide from the bottom to the top has been indicted for anything. It is incredible.
And Countrywide was purchased by Ken Lewis and Bank of America. Now, Bank of America is really having some problems in the market recently. Stock is in single digits. Will we see another problem here in the U.S. if Bank of America continues to deteriorate?
We could well. We could certainly see a Bank of America problem. Countrywide has become their Vietnam. Between lawsuits and losses and reputational issues, it has been terrible for Bank of America. If Bank of America were to need another government bailout, you have to ask now 3 years later, would they get one? And if they didn't, does the government have the ability to wind them down? We don't even know the answer to that at this point. That's what's scary.
Are we in the process also of seeing a sequel to what happened in the U.S. over in Europe? What happens if the Eurozone breaks up? Do you think that they're sufficiently walled off from affecting us over here?
They are certainly not sufficiently walled off. In 1932, before money was bits and bytes, an Austrian bank failed. And that contagion jumped to the United States and helped lead to the bank runs in the United States in the 1930s. So the notion that we're walled off today in our modern, sophisticated electronic system is insane. Europe's in deep trouble, and the French and German banks are in deep trouble if Greece and some of these other countries default. Could it jump the ocean, and could that contagion hit us? You bet.
Is the devil perhaps then just human nature? It happened in the 1930s, it happened in the early 2000s. It's just going to happen again. It just takes us a little bit of time to forget about the last one.
I think it's too easy to say that. I totally agree with you that the devil is human nature. But in the 1930s, we created the SEC, we created Glass-Steagall, we created a series of pretty radical regulatory reforms that kept human nature from acting inappropriately for 60, 70 years. We didn't have a crisis. Now this notion that we should have a crisis every 6 years or a dozen years is almost accepted. It's a terrible idea. You can't have a country in capital crisis every half a dozen years. It's devastating to the country.